Cool. Okay, is it edit? Yeah. All right. I think I started the streaming as well. So this would record the, yes, this starts also the recording, so we should be set.
Whoa, so cool. All right. So I have no idea who else is joining. We'll just play it by ear. We got a lot of messages of people who are not coming.
I think the time is a bit difficult for people in the United States. So that makes sense that they're not coming.
But Jay is here, and she's in New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh,
I think it's like 4:30.
Then it's a hero.
4:30. But she's a Yaley, so they're kind of like tryhards. So don't tell her.
I hear some voice from Jay. I'm not sure it's loud enough. Yes.
I will be sort of quiet because I don't want to wake my roommates back here. And I'll see how long I last because we're like about to enter final exam period, so yeah. But thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for coming. And we have Simon. Hey, Simon. Simon disappeared. Hey, is that you, Simon?
No.
No.
Guys, at the moment, we are the only two with the microphone open.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I would say that, I mean, what is the agenda for today? We can also start.
Sure. So basically what we want to do is to start a series of conversations in which people who are involved in what we're calling meta mapping, which is basically helping maps talk to each other. So people involved in that kind of bridge building share what aspect of that bridge building they're involved with, so that ultimately after a couple of these conversations we can make a map of the meta mappers. It's a very meta project, because even these maps are already trying to aggregate place-based information or thematic information. And yeah, we know that there are multiple bridge building initiatives happening, but at least I don't understand the differences and similarities between those. So far on the Telegram, it seemed like those meta mappers are also interested in learning from each other and positioning themselves vis-a-vis each other. So that's basically how I see the conversation. Anybody wants to add anything to that?
Sorry, I was eating because it's my breakfast time, so now I'm blushing as well. If I can start, well, thank you for letting me facilitate this a little bit technically. I'm Federico. For those that don't know me, I live in Amsterdam. I'm sort of media artist, and my interest in metamapping was mostly as a consumer. I would like to understand what is in the space. What I contributed with was some years ago, took the form of a game. It's called a Grand Jeu, that is useful for building a conversation by starting with playing a table game. So this was my contribution in the beginning. I ran a project called Transformatorio, in which we use art for helping communities to start. Mostly, it's a project that was successful in the first stages of constructing a communities. So really helping the imagination to grow, and at the same time to settle some instruments by doing, not they are not instruments that are to be taught top down, but they are to be apprehended by doing. As in art practices happens often, and therefore it's useful for this kind of situation. So yeah, I'm here to learn something more. I'm part of the group to learn something more, and I think we can go on with this round if you like, guys.
Sure.
Yeah,
John, you want to go next?
for sure. Thank you so much for holding the space, Heis and Federico. And I think it's been a long time coming, and we've been feeling the need of a group like this for who knows how long. And I agree with Federico. I mean, I feel in some ways I come to this group as a need as a consumer, someone who needs this tool just to more holistically like see things as they're happening, but then also on the same time a contributor because in my own work I constantly constantly am facing kind of like the obstacle of aggregating large amounts of data together, especially qualitative data that is mostly analog and it's hard to bridge over, but more so just for context mapping. And so as a contributor, also as a consumer, I feel it's a type of thing that is very useful to me. And one way I think of coming it in a very thoughtful way is just the ultimate repository of aggregated data that ends up being very useful to whoever it might be for whatever their ultimate goal is, but ultimately in the name of regeneration. And I think we're seeing it in a way where like some people are doing fairly regenerative work and they may not even know because they don't have any kind of context to scale it or to bring scale to it across different areas. And maybe it doesn't even have to be geolocation. I think when you say map, people always think of like a map of some projection of the Earth, but that's not particularly only what we're talking about here, right? So viewing things not only in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions, but trying to add another layer of dimension to it. So as a contributor, it makes my work as an individual easier, but then also as a consumer, it gives me a better view of the world I'm living in, at least in a way that maybe I would want to consume, something that I'd be willing to pay for. That's for sure. Because I like, for example, like I have friends who are like mountaineers and alpinists, and they really use this tool called Fat Map. And like in Fat Map, you can like look at a mountain and like zoom into it, see the moisture levels and all these things, and really know whether you're going to get hit by an avalanche or not at the end of the day. But I think it's something like that in a sense where you can have context to a place that you're maybe thinking about approaching or trying to climb maybe a metaphorical mountain in terms of maybe some sector in some industry. So I think yeah, it's definitely useful on both levels. This kind of group coming together. I think obviously there's more than just 5 of us, but I think it starts small. And yeah, I think there's a lot that we could provide here from all of us being in different places. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Popcorn Simon.
Hi. Sorry, I'm having a problem with my technical side here. Yeah, I'm a bit out of context at the moment, so I'm just going to listen and see what people are talking about. I know I've been here. I know I've been in this space before, and it's very interesting. But let me just listen. That's all. Thanks.
Sure, Simon. I think that's no problem. The only thing is our first meeting. So so far we were just exchanging on the Telegram group. So you're very much welcome. And that's all I want to say. Jay, if you manage to talk and you want to say something, otherwise you are welcome also to keep quiet if you want.
Was the question like generally why we are here?
Why we're here in this group, or why we're here on the planet Earth? This call. Yeah, so I have I have an idea of why I brought this group together, which is, like I shared before, about like bringing the mappers together. I can share like what's my interest with that. I am originally from the Netherlands, but I've been living in India for the last 20 years. Mainly been involved in networking people who are working on alternatives. So whether it is alternative agriculture, alternative media, alternative education, alternative energy, and there are various such networks that are active and quite well organized in India. But like I said, I also have a European, part of my life is based on Europe, and I wanted to connect these two, like the India life and the Europe life. So one of the things I'm doing is helping people travel overland between Europe and India. I'm calling this the Green Silk Road. And right now we're developing it into an educational program, like a travel-based learning program. And one of the first things that we need when we travel is a map. And so then we started making our own map. And in the process of making our own map, we realized that there are already tons of maps out there. And then in the process of approaching other people who are making maps, we realized that there are like 7, 8, 9 different ways of making maps. And then we came to this question like, okay, so should we now be actually building a interoperability platform for different kinds of maps? And then I looked around and saw that there are already interoperability platforms for having maps speak with each other. So right now, I have this need to understand, is there an existing map interoperability platform that we can just use and run with? Or do we have to wait a few months or a few years for these things to become usable? Or is there like 2 or 3 that are kind of complementary, and is it easy for them to just collaborate to make things smoother? So that's basically why I started this group. There's this guy, what's his name? I think Ollie, who works with Murmurations. There's another guy called Dan who works with Catalyst and GaiaNet. There's a lady called Andrea who works with CohereNet. And there's probably more. I just don't know who's doing what and how it relates to each other. So some people seem to be working really on like new code, which is kind of a layer that you can put on top of your own map so that it can talk to other people. Some people are saying like, oh, we have a kind of an operating system. If you want to make a map, make it in our tool so that your map can easily talk to other people's maps. Some people like with a global tapestry of alternatives, which is again, it's kind of a network of networks of networks at the global scale. They are trying to start really at the grassroots, making like maps that have the intention from the start to be interoperable with other maps. So there are different ways, different approaches to this interoperability. And I like this topic that Sean brought up, where yes, we have kind of geolocated maps, but then there are also other approaches to mapping, like if you're talking about themes or knowledge or stuff which is not necessarily place-based. Is there a synergy between that kind of mapping and the place-based mapping? I don't know. I have this sense that I feel a risk of letting go of the place-based approach, because I'm a bit afraid of getting caught in like the virtual space where everything can be related to anything else, and then before you know it, like everything is like meaningless. So that's why I tend to be a little bit conservative, that at least I feel everything has to have some connection to a place on the planet. But I'm open to be convinced otherwise. But yeah, if on this call we don't have anybody who's directly working on a map interoperability a project, maybe that's good to know, because then we can categorize this conversation as a something else than like a list. I think ultimately, if we have a couple of these conversations, some of them are going to ideally have some presentation where somebody says, oh yeah, this is my interoperability approach, and this is how it relates to other people's interoperability approaches.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Heis, and it's definitely uncomfortable for me to think about maps not being place-based, but it's something to explore. And when it comes to something that I've been currently working on as a interactive, more so interactive than interoperable, but with the intention of interoperability, is like a new type of bioregional map, where we take away administrative borders, and instead of administrative borders, we have bioregional or ecoregional or just watershed mapping. Because right now, when I've been trying to aggregate the data between different countries, and it's only like 1 year of surveyed data on a particular year that's compared to another year that data was surveyed in another country, and trying to aggregate that it's not very helpful to just take that data and then aggregate it on a map and be like, okay, this is a good interpretation of the bioregional Earth we're living in. So something is in terms of designing it with the intention that people from local areas can at least try to survey on their own and edit maps. Which is something I feel like, I mean, landmarks are landmarks and things like this, but I feel like administrative borders kind of hinder people to develop more layers on top of the map. They're like, it's all been discovered. There's no more discovery that needs to happen in my local area. Not in the sense of putting new borders, but just something I've been designing is just a bioregional, more than one Earth, and a little more of an interactive mapping system where people can kind of add in their own idea of their own bioregion based on their own cultural history, or similar to kind of your mapping project, Heis. But that's something maybe for another call, how we can compare our mapping techniques. If Jahi would like to add her context to this call, why she felt compelled to join, even though it's finals week, and she's probably very tired. Or if you just want to give a little blurb in the chat.
Oh, I had very little context coming into this call. I didn't realize that interoperability between maps would be like the purpose. That's really interesting though. I unfortunately do not have a lot of experience in that area. I was just interested in like how like alternative systems that are more sustainable are even developed. And that kind of like stems from like getting to know some underground activists in the African continent, but I'm very unsure of like how to support them. And it seems like the default way of them just like gaining visibility is through various forms of activism, but it feels limiting because activism often like plays into like pathos. But how can we like create something more concrete? A legal strategy seems like too ambitious, but I was just thinking like, yeah, I was mostly too informed about it.
viaje que nunca hubiese pensado. O sea, no sé cómo acabó en Bali, la verdad. Se acabó en Bali porque, como creía que mi amigo se iba.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing another conversation. I don't know if it's
Me too.
somebody on the
I'm
phone.
planning.
Okay, Shahan.
I will come.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think the my feedback for guys. I think it was very understandable. What is the motivation? I just want to add two things I was busy thinking about. One is the necessity of being connected to a location that is, it's a good filter, but also connects inevitably to law system and identity. So in an abstract level, when you, because my problem with mapping has always been, I mean, in the last 2 years has been connected to a problem that I fell into. That was in doing artistic, I'll make it as short as possible. Doing artistic activity, you are a vector of gentrification for remote area without willing or without wishing, actually wishing the opposite. So it happened to us to see in Europe, in Italy in particular, that we were immediately kind of sucked into sort of involuntary test for gentrification. And then I had a long thinking about sharing information inside and outside the small circuits, because information can be exploited. Maybe not, I mean, so stupidly like Facebook, etc., trying to put up scam about selling houses for €1 on Facebook, but something more complex. And some communities need an approach to which you also have some degrees of trust before you share information. So yeah, this is a little bit my back thoughts about mapping. Especially in the open source field, you risk really that your information gets sucked by commercial partners, non-partners, and commercial in the commercial world, and used for things you've not thought of. And yeah, and in your project especially, guys, where a lot of connections are based on trust, on the passage of trust between one person you trust and another one. I introduce you somebody that I think it's trustworthy to maybe have as a guest in your place, or as I can trust he has some knowledge, for example. And this is an important thing, because it's working, can work, but maybe it's not necessarily meta mapping. But in the context of meta mapping, add this layer of a trust system, I think it's important. And that's my angle.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it's a great topic to get into, because I think it'll help us also in the process of the meta mapping. This whole idea of privacy and stewardship of this data. To what extent, what kind of information is to be accessible to which user. It feels really important. I'm just curious. I see one person called Tabs who just joined. Can you say who you are?
Hello.
Hey, hello.
Let me see if I can. Hello, this is me. I'm standing outside in beautiful North Wales. We are tucked in just behind Snowdon, the largest mountain in the UK. And I was invited to this chat room by Bart, and I've been working with the Regenesis Institute a bit on a collaboration platform for their network. So we have been discussing a mapping platform, and I'm curious to learn more and be of service.
Very cool. Do you want to say more about your mapping platform? Because yeah, we've been sharing a bit about what is our interest in the mapping, and most of us are actually largely users, not necessarily platform creators. So yeah, would love to know about your platform.
Cool. Yeah, I'm an aspiring platform creator. I'm not a platform creator yet. My background is in engineering. I've been all over the shop, went through Formula One, renewable energy, then a bit on DMRV for nature-based solutions, and most recently sort of DAOs and things, but not super deep. But yeah, I did this course with the Regenesis Institute, which is sort of a course to about living systems and things like that. And they have a global network of about 1,500 practitioners, and in Europe we have 150 or so. And their sort of next stage in the evolution of their program is a focus on the application of those learnings, not just the teachings. So
Well, the connection fell. I hope it's going to
Gone
fall
gone with the wind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
sorry, accidentally dropped off. So for them, it's a question of capacity building and building capacity in local networks. And really, I don't know exactly what that means, but my sense is that it's very multidimensional. So there are aspects of networking, of resourcing, and storytelling, and all of these. How can all of these different dimensions be reflected in a platform? How can this community know of itself through this platform, through all of these different dimensions, and yet still be honoring that common thread of this practice that the Regenesis School is teaching? That's kind of the constraints I'm designing with, and another one is with it being a regenerative practice. How can the platform be functional at global scale, but honoring place unique work? And as a software project, that's I don't know, particularly interesting to me.
And do you see yourself collaborating with other people who are doing that kind of platform building?
I certainly do. Yeah, I'd like to, of course, always. It's been a several month long conversation, and they're not super technical, so it's been a process of trying to probe where we can reach common ground in the design space, and how much flexibility there will be there. So they don't have a lot of tech already, based on WordPress at the moment, and they are a little bit. I'm not sure how protective they're going to be about this sort of boundary of it's for our community or it's multi-community, multi-network. But that's actually one project, and a second one is where I am based currently in person, and we're planning on running a series of hackathons next year, which together address different aspects of an overall platform like that, an overall sort of integrated capacity building platform. So they're sort of, each voyage is like an interim step leading up to something that is sort of whole or coherent. And here we have like a lot more open source mentality and sort of hacker backgrounds.
That sounds pretty amazing. Well, when is that scheduled for, those hackathon events?
Starting in March, so to run through the months of March to October, March to September. So I would love to discuss that more, and we can definitely discuss that. And it's a mostly open event, and would love to find more collaborators with that and sort of network with other spaces too.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, because I mean, besides having an introduction to these different initiatives, my expectation is that after that, the next question is like, okay, who has time to to try out bridging these different initiatives? Yay, Simon has a long history in technical input interoperability. You have also time. Because the devil's, oh shit, we lost tabs again. Is most often in the detail, no? Like it's great to have an intention of bringing things together, and then it comes to actually doing a test of, okay, so you've got 5 communities, you've got 3 communities, there's another 2 communities, and now let's see what we want to bring together. And only then will most people realize that, oh, actually, that's way too much data, I'm not willing to share, or no, I was expecting that you're going to share much more, or and at least this is my expectation, that's where we're going to need more people's time. But please speak.
No, I agree with you that for something to work, you need the technical aspect. But I would like just to add that this technical aspect has to be co-developed with the co-design practice. So you cannot keep them apart, especially when it's community-based kind of information construction. Otherwise, you don't have, I mean, you risk to make damages with sharing information that is not necessarily, that is a bit dangerous to share. but also you risk more simply that people doesn't use the tool. So it's very important that the argument is developed together with the communication as one, everybody together as one. I mean, my approach comes out of permaculture, what I learned from permaculture. And I think that's a good way to welcome complexity in a way that you can design with it. And yeah, I think definitely it's important.
Simon, you want to share a bit about what is your current perspective on this space of interoperability between maps?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'm not sure actually. Is my video on? Because I think I lost my own self view. Okay. Great. Yeah. I've been working in the learning technology interoperability space for quite a while, electronic portfolios and so forth, and working with like CEN and ISO and British standards and everything. So as well as some of the other groups, but the technical side, the technical side is not really the. I mean, it's detailed, but it's not really the key thing. I think the key thing is absolutely the human side and the social relationships and everything, and how we understand each other. Mapping. I'm not a sort of geo person terribly much myself, but I have been tracking Ollie and murmurations for a few years, and I think is quite a promising kind of thing. Seems to get quite a bit of traction, and I'm just really interested in the way in which different people conceive of the area, the challenges, the issues, the ontology, and I'm particularly interested in the ontology of complex spaces. Like if there's a complex domain somewhere, different people see it differently. How do we bring those people to how do we help those people come together in some sort of common understanding? I don't necessarily mean exactly the same. I think that's probably too constraining, but I do think it's really important to help people towards being able to communicate effectively. That's really the key of it, being able to communicate and have a kind of common language to understand each other's perspectives, a sort of multi-perspectival view, I think. So I'm really curious, and I've been wondering about murmurations for a while and thinking, well, okay, it's okay. But Ollie has been talking about as ontology neutral, and I think, is it really ontology neutral? I'm not sure. I would be very keen to, I'm very interested and quite keen to participate in the kind of dialogue which helps people to understand each other's perspectives. What are we trying to map? What are the fundamental basics on which we can agree? Because that's really, I think, the foundation for me of any kind of global approach to interoperability, is that we kind of agree on something. And what is it that we can actually agree on? How can we find agreement? Not simply by saying, this is my position, and what do we do about it? But by saying, well, this is how I'm currently thinking about it. This is how you are currently thinking about it. How can our different perspectives help each other to see the world in a kind of richer way, and to get that sort of overview of a sort of collaborative, participatory ontology design, if you like, something like that. And I think that's what so many people have been looking for in different ways, and so that's why I'm really keen to participate in that kind of dialogue process, if that makes sense.
Totally. And how would you see that process happening? Like the first thing that comes to mind is maybe it's helpful to constrain it to either a theme, or a region, to not get lost in overwhelm.
Yeah, I don't. The simple answer is I don't know. And it's always a difficult challenge with complex where people have a lot of different stuff. But one of the things that I'm also very keen on is knowledge commons. And my guess is that if we start by laying out, if all the different parties, if all the different interested people start by laying out what they are concerned with, the key things in their own ontology, which actually they're concerned with. And if we can have a kind of, I imagine it as a wiki, I suppose, but could be anything, somewhere where we can collaboratively make links between and cross map between the different areas without being kind of too centralized. I mean, yeah, there has to be some sort of common platform, but without being too centralized in terms of the management of that kind of thing. I think that would be really, really interesting and potentially fruitful. So I would say I would start by everybody writing and illustrating what their particular mapping concerns. What are they trying to map? How are they trying to map it? And then invite people to kind of build the connections between those different things. Something like that.
Well, technically, thank you very much for your suggestion, Simon. I think technically, to put up a wiki for the Telegram group is a good idea. Is a very good idea as a form of collecting information. We were thinking also to use something like Ether, MD, HackMD kind of file to make it even simpler to start with.
At least an index to different, like the first thing to do is to index all the different things, all the different resources which are currently out there, and then people can actually find stuff.
Yeah. In case I can put up that probably.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Like a trellis for the knowledge commons.
I've been involved in Michelle Bowens' P2P Foundation wiki for several years, and well, I mean, it's a good effort from him, but I think it lacks the social dimension, it lacks the sort of social cohesion dimension.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on the social cohesion dimension that is necessary, there is also another thing that it's politics, unfortunately. So if you create an infrastructure of meta mapping that carries a sort of type of information and trust on the sources, for example, it's not only. I mean, I come from a place where we use in free software to think about appropriation from corporate. And it happened, but the problem is nowadays appropriation can be political and also not be so nice. Especially, you have to adapt to various communities and always think about, usability of the data for places that are turning a bit repressive or oppressive in general. Nevertheless, it's just a thought. I don't want to contaminate the discussion with it.
Usability and accessibility is so important. And I think part of usability, the kind of cognitive size part of usability, is being able to speak in the different languages of the different participants. I mean, both technically, both actually linguistically, but that's another question. But also conceptually, you know, it'll only, any interoperability system will only work if we can connect up the ways in which different people are thinking about this complex domain. That has to be inclusive in some way. There has to be a sort of strong theme of inclusivity, and communication and dialogue.
Yeah, there's a bit of a tension, no, between the inclusivity and what Federico was talking about, like the protection that you want to protect from co-optation or abuse by others. So somehow you want things open and closed at the same time. So I guess there's, you know,
it's
dialect.
exactly that the problem. Maybe I should make a very simple example, because otherwise it seems I'm talking really about big things. But small village up in the mountains in Italy. We are there with 30 artists doing art for the community, and as an idea of regeneration, the village passed from 2,000 people in the early 20th century to 120. Most of the houses are empty, and the commercial value of the houses is practically nothing. We do an intervention in 2 steps. The first step's finished, a lot of attention on Facebook, and one of my friends gets contacted by a seller that proposes him to buy a house in this village for an interesting sum and do a fraud at the same time on the possibility of restoring the house with subvention from the state. The scale of this intervention was really small, 120 people, and we were doing some posting on Facebook. That's all we were doing. Go back to the second part of the project, and the mayor of the town has organized another group to get in, a local group to get in for developing the village with public money. And he says to us in the face that if he manages to get a sum to the village, if he has to leave 30% to the politicians, he's fine with that. So we had to leave the village. Now, this is North Italy, so Europe, let's say, and is in 2022,
Wow.
21. And that's the state of things that, that I'm worried about. If I had done an intervention with like crypto on a blockchain, on a public blockchain, and people would start to put information there from which you can get their census, for example, or their the spare time they have, would it be ethical? Because it can be appropriate very easy, and not from Google, from the guy next door. And this is maybe why in these villages people is very careful at what they say to the neighbor. And it's constraint in design that for me was totally new, in the sense that, I was coming from European projects in which the idea was to, you have to protect this kind of people, you have to help them out, you get to give them. But my idea of the problems was totally on a different level. Was not in this immediate network of thinking. So this is exactly what I'm thinking of. It's not when you are doing mapping, it's a very powerful tool, as Google knows, and to exploit information on a small scale, very small.
Yeah, I guess at some point, or well, maybe one of the principles could be that it should be possible for people to take themselves off the map, at any point in time.
Yeah, this is a possibility. I was more thinking about a structure of trust. So you open to the people that you say that you trust can be friends and friends of friends. But I mean, this is something really that has to be thought of. But I'm putting it on the table because I think it has to be thought of before starting to design interoperability and before involving a lot of people into it. You know, the model with six connections you get to anybody in the planet. It's actually how, if you have to travel from A to B and you need a place to sleep, you ask your friends if they know somebody there. You know, and it's very natural and it works pretty good. And this is, of course, very much exploited, but okay, I stop here, otherwise I monopolize the discourse. Guys, if you agree, just watching the clock, I think we got another 10 minutes to the hour. I've put on my agenda to watch Murmuration and try to bring up a system for us to write upon online and put it back on the Telegram. Probably a wiki. I'll see what I can do with a little wiki system. If you agree, of course. It's just a proposal.
Amazing.
I'd like to just to sort of put a question in the middle, which I'm hearing, and I think the question is, how do we balance this how do we achieve this balance between making things completely public and providing some information, mapping some information in a way which is only accessible to only visible by certain people, certain chosen people. And that's it's a big question. And actually, it's very important for Murmurations as well, because Murmurations has been doing fine on organizational data, and organizations typically are public things, which, who don't restrict, apart from, unless you're a Freemason or something, you don't want to restrict access to your organizational data. But what Murmurations has not really, in my understanding, hasn't really fully got a good approach to is personal information. I think for exactly this reason, that people don't want to just splurge all of their personal information in a completely public space. So how do we actually do that? And I think that's it's something which I've got opinions on, which I can share another time. But it's a really interesting challenge.
But should we be particularly worried about if it's a type of person that is the ideal user? Should we be worried about revealing their identity or preserving their anonymity? Is it for you guys particularly? Like, is that a want or a need? Coming from the user perspective, like if you had to prove your trust or your authenticity, and that required you somewhat doxing yourself, is that, I know it's uncomfortable, but there's some levels as to which we're experiencing this when we use the Gitcoin grant stack, right? We have to tell our donors, hey, you have to connect your Gmail with your wallet and then also this to get enough of a trust score, and therefore evidently you dox yourself, and then that's kind of a turn off for one user base, but also a turn on for another. And so the trade-off is hard to say, but yeah, you're totally right, Simon. I mean, I think it's a difficult problem to approach.
Yeah, we've got to address it.
Yeah, for the personal data, there is laws in Europe, so there are things that you simply cannot do, or the things that you can do, but it's a hassle, it's a horrible. But what I'm thinking of is more the the metadata problem. So automatic exploitation of information that is there, and it's already done. I mean, it's not that it's not done. The whole thing I was talking about was based on leaked information on Facebook and Instagram, and inferences by people. So and also the counter for that was mostly digital. I mean, I googled the name of the guy that was proposing this thing, and comes out that he had problems with the law before, so that he was somebody that not to be trusted. But and he probably did that with me as well. That's not a big problem that I foresee, but it's in design space. When you design with interoperability of possibly big community-based data, so very close to people, they leak into other very close to people kind of information that is informal. And that's an issue. On the other hand, to respond to you, I'm personally more a pseudonymic person. If I have to do something quiet, I create a pseudonym. But I'm rather experienced. It's something I play with since a lot of time. People doesn't think about that. They think I have nothing to hide, or stay away from how much money I make on Sunday. Truly. I mean,
Italy has a reputation for that. Yes.
Yeah, but not only Italy. I live in Holland, and I can
Right.
tell you that is exactly the same thing. It just changes the type of pressure you're put upon from the Belastingdienst, and therefore the way you use to avoid.
I mean, similar thing in India, at least my grandfather and my aunties and uncles that are kind of new money, first generation kind of, business owners or entrepreneurs. They have to hide their wealth very meticulously. So I can understand that it's a prevalent issue. People have different ways of doing it, right? You buy a small house or something, and you don't talk to many people or something. But I don't know. There's definitely different ways to mitigate it.
I think it's just coming back to what earlier we were talking about, that there's two streams. One is the technology stream, where I'm thinking of this kind of stuff, that data should be like deletable and so forth. The other stream is like the social cultural stream. So I'm actually thinking maybe alongside with the technical work on interoperability, etc. There should be some kind of a capacity building for communities and for users on, like Federico has experience on like how to become anonymous or how to use a pseudonym, and it's a skill that you acquire over time, by interacting with these tools that you don't in the beginning yet see the power of. I'm based in India. I work with smallholder farmers, and right now we've got a massive problem with carbon credits, that many farmers have their names on like big lists of smallholder farmers, and these carbon cowboys, they're coming and they're saying, oh, give me that list and I'll pay you like $10,000, and then suddenly they've got 100,000 farmers on whose behalf they can sell carbon credits. And the farmers have no idea. They're not aware that their data is being expropriated, exploited, and so forth. So I think along with the technology development, I feel it's important to have like I don't really know how to call it, a capacity building or something, because there's also this thing of that if you don't understand the risk, then you can overestimate the fear, and then you can close too much. So you don't want to close too much, you don't want to open too much, and somehow the communities who are in this regenerative work need to understand more what is the opportunity and what's the risk.
Yeah, makes complete sense.
Well,
On a note of homework, that's something that I can do homework on.
okay, fantastic. I think it was really interesting for me to have all these angles and in the discussion. So thank you very much. I have some stuff to do.
Thank
So,
you.
you hear of me on the list. If you want to continue, I leave it in on so we can continue recording. You don't have to switch off with me, as you like.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'm also happy to go. I don't know how everybody else is.
Yeah, I'm happy to move on. I'll yeah, other things to do. So thanks. Nice to meet you all.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Ciao, ciao. See you next time.
Ciao, ciao, guys. Pleasure.
You all.
Thank you.